Hello and welcome back. I am really glad you're here. This week's topic is really interesting because it's not something that I would expect to be talking about maybe 2 years ago. And this is the topic of how I make friends everywhere I go. Let me clarify that I don't actually mean friends. If you know anything about what I consider to be a friend is somebody that you actually spend time with. And we don't meet somebody and they immediately become a friend. That's one of the things that our kids get jumbled up a bit sometimes. So just to be clear, I'm not making friends everywhere I go. Technically, I'm making acquaintances everywhere I go. But that seemed a little more awkward and clunky for the title, and everybody likes the concept of friends. And so that's what I went with for the title of this episode, How I Make Friends Everywhere I Go. So I want to tell you guys how this phase of my life started, and then I want to share how I do this, what I look for when I talk to people, how I talk to people, how I stay connected to people, and just kind of the whole journey that I go through when it comes to connecting to people out in the world. And just a heads up that it does involve doing some things that go against what we may traditionally teach our kids or what we as adults may have traditionally been taught when it comes to interacting and engaging with other people out in the world. So there are definitely some things that that I say and that I do that are not what anybody has ever taught me or told me to say or do. So there's some twists and turns coming along the way as well. This started about 1.5 years ago when I went on my first international trip. It was the first time I left North America, and it was in March of 2023. I am a pretty big introvert. When it comes to my students, I have all the social energy in the world. I can be around my students for hours and days. But in terms of just being in the world in general, I really love being by myself. I prefer to be by myself most of the time. I get pretty worn out, even just by doing things like running errands. I typically do my errands in one day because it's pretty exhausting for me. So that's another reason why what has happened in my life over the last 1.5 years has really actually surprised me and caught me off guard. But it started with this trip that I took. I did not intend to go on this trip by myself when I first decided to go. I thought that other people would join me. I just knew that it was really important to me and I really wanted to go. So I made my plans and I went to New Zealand and Australia, and I competed in half Ironman triathlons in both countries. And I knew I have friends who had done the race in New Zealand before. So I thought that I would have other friends who would want to go race with me. The race in New Zealand is typically a bucket list race for people who do triathlon. So I thought, surely there will be other people who want to go on this adventure with me. And there weren't. I even posted it in some Facebook groups that I'm in that have people from all over the place. And nope. At the time, I was actively dating. I thought maybe I would meet somebody who wanted to go with me. Nope. So once it got to be about 90 days from the time I was leaving, it became really clear that I was going by myself. And at the time, that was actually really overwhelming for me to think about. I had never traveled by myself. And again, it was my first time leaving North America. It's a pretty big deal. I was leaving for 4 weeks. So it's not like it was a small trip. It was a huge trip to the other side of the world. And here I am doing this by myself. I also, my ADHD brain is very much a big picture. I love ideas and just thinking about possibilities. I am very, very bad at details. Sometimes I just don't even think about the things that need to be in place or that need to be done. I'm just not a detailed person. My brain just doesn't function that way. So this made me even a little more concerned about going on this giant adventure by myself. I'm not a detailed person. So luckily I had a travel agent that planned the whole thing for me. Otherwise, who knows what would have happened. But she planned the whole trip for me. So all I had to do was just follow the itinerary and show up where I was supposed to show up. So by the time the trip came around, the only real concern I had was driving on the left side of the road. Because I was traveling for races, I had my bike with me the whole time, which meant that I needed vehicles in most of the places I went to be able to get to the races. And I went to a conference in Sydney. And so I needed to be able to have a vehicle and I needed to be able to have my bike with me. So by the time the trip came up, that was only my real concern is learning how to drive on the other side of the road. Happy to say I nailed it, by the way. No New Zealanders or Australians were harmed while I was learning how to drive on the other side of the road. I um I love Facebook groups. Facebook groups that are well moderated and well run. I'll add that caveat to it. I love them. They're such a great way to connect with other people that you share interests with, which is such an amazing building block for meeting people. So I love Facebook groups. Because of this, I had already connected to some people that lived in New Zealand and Australia. Some of them were people that were doing the races I was doing. Some of them were people that lived in places I was going. So I already had a few people that I knew I was going to connect with when I got there. What I didn't know and what I didn't expect is that I met people and connected with people and made new acquaintances and had really amazing connections with people everywhere I went for the entire 4 weeks. And when I got home, that was really the most surprising part of the whole adventure for me is how much I connected with other people when I typically prefer to just stay to myself. I'm a friendly person. I'm a kind person. I'm an outgoing person, but I typically prefer to just do my own thing and stay to myself. And so it surprised me how many people I had connected with. And I'm still connected to most of them. So I want to share how I did that because I think whether we're talking about your kiddo, whether we're talking about you, I think we all have a little bit of social anxiety. I think it shows up differently in different people. For some people, it looks like holding back from social interactions. For some people, it looks like going full force into social interactions and ending up with really awkward social interactions. Some people choose to not interact with people at all. Some people just are always that person who's socially awkward. So I think we all have social anxiety to some degree. We all have this innate human concern about being left out, right? It's a kind of a tribal thought that we have is we don't want to get kicked out of the tribe, so to speak. So I think we all have a little bit of social anxiety and it can look different in different people. One of the things that I've recognized I'm really good at that I think is really important, especially in the context of a conversation like this, is I'm really good at being able to figure out if another person is, I'm going to say, a safe person. That encompasses a lot of things: physically safe, emotionally safe. I'm able to read people really well. And so it gives me a really good sense of whether this person I'm sitting across from, standing next to, talking to, whether it's someone I want to continue having this conversation with, or whether it's someone that I would rather not keep talking to. So I do think that's a really important piece of this social puzzle, this, connecting to other people puzzle, is being able to feel other people. And I think we all have this ability. We all are naturally intuitive, but a lot of times as we get older, we stop listening to our intuition. And our intuition becomes quieter if we stop listening to it. So I actually, unfortunately, spent a lot of time in my adult years shushing my intuition because it would tell me things like, don't get into a relationship with this person. Do you see the thing that they just did? And I would choose to ignore it because I wanted to get into a relationship with this person. It would do things like, I'm highly attuned to when people are being dishonest. And so my intuition would say, be careful. You can tell that this person's not telling the truth right now. But I wanted to be friends with that person. And so I would ignore the fact that I knew this person wasn't telling the truth right now. Over the last 5 years or so, I have really come back around, and I value and respect my intuition so much now. And because of that, it's become really strong. It's almost like a voice, a physical voice in my head that tells me kind of, what's going on with other people. It's very strong now, but it's because I pay attention to it and I respect it. When it tells me, keep your distance from this person, I pay attention to that now. So I do think that's a really, really important part of making connections and meeting new people, especially in the way that we're going to talk about today, is being able to identify people who are safe people for you to connect with. With that being said, I very rarely have run into people that I feel are not safe for me to connect with. There may be people I choose not to connect with, but in terms of safety, I'm in situations where I feel physically unsafe or emotionally unsafe. And since my trip last year, in the last 8 months, I have taken trips to 2 more countries, 11 states, and Puerto Rico. In the last 8 months, I have been on a binge when it comes to just traveling and adventuring. And this still holds true. I do not feel unsafe. I do all this by myself with my cat. I do not feel unsafe for me or for her. I do not, I've only gotten myself into kind of a sketchy situation once that I can think of, and I got myself out of it. So I think it's really important that we are aware of other people and how we feel around them. But I also think we put so much emphasis as a culture, as a society, on the fact that the world is dangerous. And that absolutely has not been my experience at all. Even the situation I got myself into when I was in Puerto Rico, it wasn't dangerous. It had the potential to be dangerous because I was somewhere that I shouldn't have been at a time I shouldn't have been there, but it wasn't dangerous. Nothing happened to me. So I do think sometimes it's easy for us to get full of fear and anxiety and apprehension about being out in the world because of all the quote unquote bad, dangerous people. And I just have not found that to be the case. I actually watched a documentary. I don't know if it's still on Netflix. I don't remember what it's called, but it's a guy, a college age kid from Germany, I believe, who went bicycling around the world. And that was the big takeaway of his documentary, is that we all are taught to believe that people are bad and they're going to hurt you and they're dangerous. And his big takeaway was he didn't experience that at all, that people were actually incredibly kind and nurturing and loving and supportive. And people in other countries welcomed them into their home, shared meals with him. So that's what I found as well. I think our brains tend to way overemphasize the negative. It's a survival instinct. And so I definitely think that happens when we talk about social interactions as well. So back to my point. I think that's one of the first things is we need to be able to sense how we feel around other people. We need to be able to pay attention to when somebody feels really comfortable, like we really feel emotionally safe talking to this person. We also need to be able to pay attention to when we just aren't really connecting with another person. We may feel totally comfortable talking to them, but we're just not really connecting. There's not really a vibe there. I think we need to be able to pay attention when we no longer feel comfortable talking to somebody. Also, things like when the conversation has run its course, being able to pay attention to that. Being able to pay attention to when people aren't interested in having a conversation. So I think this is the first thing that we all need to be able to do if we want to be able to talk to people more easily, is we need to tune into ourselves and we need to get used to those feelings and we need to be able to differentiate between them. What does it feel like in your body and in your brain when you're enjoying the conversation with another person? What does it feel like when you're not? What does it feel like when you know that you want to talk to this person again? What does it feel like when you're ready for the conversation to be over? So I think that's a really important starting point, is being able to tune in to your body and your brain and the signals that they're giving you. I was really kind of overwhelmed in New Zealand and Australia because people in general were just so friendly. The one of the first experiences I had, about 36 hours after I landed in New Zealand, I had a race. And so the day before, was out and about. I was, running. I was kind of, getting my body ready on a plane for 15 hours. And the people in the town where the race was happening, everybody was really excited about it. Everybody was really pumped about it. And in triathlon, you can track people through an app. So you just need to know either their name or their race number, and you can track them. You can watch them race. I had so many people asking for my number so they could track me in the race. I don't know anybody there. I mean, these are all complete strangers to me. But when I went to check into my hotel, I went to the wrong hotel. It had a very similar name and they were very close together in proximity. So I went to the wrong hotel. And once we established that I was at the wrong hotel, the woman who worked there asked me for my race number so she could track me in the race. I was out running and asked somebody to take a picture of me, and she asked me for my race number. So it was just such an amazing vibe in New Zealand. Everybody was just really friendly. So that was my first experience. And during the race, so again, the race was about 36 hours after I landed. It was really quick. During the race, so triathlon is swimming, cycling, and running in that order. During the run, I ended up running next to another woman. We just happened to be running next to each other. And so we just started talking. And for a half Ironman, it's 13 miles. The run is 13 miles. So, I mean, 2 hours, we're running most of it next to each other. We picked up another woman along the way, and the three of us were running together. So that was really my first time talking to somebody that I had no connection to. We were just strangers. But because of the situation where we connected, we automatically had something in common. And so this is my biggest suggestion when it comes to what to talk to people about. When you're randomly out in the world somewhere, what do you even talk about? This is my biggest suggestion, is talk about the situation that you're in. Talk about the context that you and this other person are in together. Because no matter what else, that is something you have in common with this person, is the situation that you're in. So if you're in a class in school, that class is what you have in common. If you're like me, running a race, this race is what we have in common. If you're traveling somewhere, the place you are is what you have in common. If you're an adult and you're at a conference, that conference is what you have in common with everybody else who's there. If you are in line in the grocery store, buying groceries is what you have in common with the person waiting behind you. No matter where you are, you have that place in common with everybody else who's there. If you're at an event, you have that event in common with everybody else who's there. So I think that's absolutely the best way to strike up a conversation with someone, is by referencing the situation, the context. So the other runner and I, we started a conversation because half Ironman is difficult. And so a great way to start a conversation while competing in a half Ironman is making a comment about how difficult it is. And so that's what started our connection. I think we ended up running about 10 miles together. So that's hour and a half, a little bit more, hour 45 that we ran together. And along the way, I learned that it was her first half Ironman. It was my fifth, I think. So we were able to talk about that. I was able to give her kind of strategies and suggestions. We were able to talk about New Zealand. She lives in New Zealand. So it was really cool for me to talk to her as someone who lives there, because it was my first time being there. We were able to talk about the weather, which is actually, I know it's a very cliche, but to me, that's a number one topic, because everybody experiences the weather. Even if you're talking to somebody on the phone who lives across the world, you can talk about the weather, because even if you're experiencing different weather, which you probably are, you're both experiencing weather. So we were able to talk about how it was actually really warm in New Zealand at the beginning of March. For me, it wasn't, it was normal because I'm from Texas. So for me, the temperatures were normal. It didn't bother me at all. But I noticed that a lot of people were really having a hard time. It was warm. It just, for me, that was normal. So we were able to talk about the weather. We talked about all kinds of things. And then at one point, when the third person joined us, we were able to integrate her into our conversation. So it's just connecting over the scenario that you're in, the context that you're in, and then building off of that. So that's how we start conversations with people out in the world, is connecting based on the situation that we're in. We do want to try to make sure that we are saying things that are positive, not complaining. Starting a conversation by complaining about something is usually doesn't make people want to connect with us. So even when racing, you can make complaining comments about it, but we do it in the form of humor, in the form of a joke, if that makes sense. So maybe something like, "Oh, I'm really glad I paid to do this," so you make a joke out of it. "Oh, 13, only 13 more miles to go." So you can say something if you're, kind of having a hard time, but we try not to complain about things, because usually people aren't going to want to connect with us if that's the vibe that we're giving off, is that we're negative and we complain. When it comes to actual conversations, I heard this phrase one time and I thought it's so well said, and I think it's so true. Most of us really want to come across, when we're having a conversation with somebody, as interesting. We want to have things that we can talk about that we think this other person will be interested in. We want to, be able to share things about us that we think will make us seem like cool. This is a reason why a lot of people might embellish. They might say things that aren't true, because we're trying to impress other people. We're trying to seem interesting. But the phrase is, it's better to be interested than interesting. And I love that so much because it's so true. We tend to be attracted to people who are interested in what we're talking about. Even if we might not think they're that interesting, if they're asking us questions, if they're making comments about the things that we're talking about, they're showing that they're interested, and that is more attractive. If you think about someone who, let's say you have 20 minutes to spend with someone, you guys just randomly ran into each other somewhere out in the world, and you have 20 minutes, maybe you're in a waiting room somewhere, and they spend 15 of those minutes talking about themselves. And maybe they have a really amazing life, but like after a while, you kind of get over it. And you would really like them to ask you questions, or you would like to be able to talk about your life a little bit. Actually, as I'm saying this, I have a recent example of this. This was on Facebook, so it wasn't in person, but I saw a post that somebody had made. I saw that somebody was in a couple Facebook groups that I'm in related to travel. And so I very rarely friend request people that I don't know, and I don't accept friend requests from people that I don't know. We have to have at least had a conversation. And so I sent this person a message and I was like, "Hey, I'm really loving following your journey. It seems really amazing, and I would love to connect." And I even said, I don't usually connect to people I don't know, but I'm really enjoying, the things that you're posting about. And so we became Facebook friends. We chatted for a little bit in Facebook Messenger. And then I learned by becoming his Facebook friend through the things that he was posting that he lives in San Antonio, which I didn't even know that. So San Antonio is where Starfish Social Club is based. It's where I've lived for a very long time. I didn't even know that when I connected to him. So then I thought, oh my gosh, that's another thing we have in common. That's so crazy. We were connected for several weeks on Facebook, and he is traveling the world basically. And so he's posting multiple times a day about where he is and what he's doing and the food that he's eating and all these kinds of things. Um, but I noticed that he was never commenting, liking, reacting to anything I was posting. And I notice things like that about people. I notice when relationships seem a little one-sided. And so this went on for a few weeks. And I also started to notice that he was posting things that were very attention seeking, right? Like he's just trying to get social validation and attention, basically. And so I just got to the point where I thought, this person has never liked, commented anything that I've ever posted. And I was traveling myself at the time, never liked or commented anything that I had posted. And I can tell that his agenda is to get a lot of attention. And so I just unfriended him because I thought, this isn't going anywhere. He even, because he follows me, I had talked about San Antonio. I even was preparing to go to San Antonio when we were connected. And so there was an opportunity for him to realize that we had that connection. But at no point did he ever respond to anything I ever posted. And I'm very active with people that I care about on social media. I like what they post. I love what they post. I comment about what they post, because otherwise, why are we Facebook friends? That's kind of how I feel about it. If we're not engaging with what people are posting, why are we Facebook friends? So I'm not a big fan of the people who Facebook friend and then don't care at all about what's going on in your life. Not a big fan of that. So my point being, at first he was really interesting to me, but very quickly that faded because he was 0% interested in me or my life or what I have going on. So very quickly that faded for me. And I am no longer interested in his interesting life because there's just no reciprocity. On the other hand, I have some people that I'm connected to on Facebook that I actually don't know a whole lot about their life. So I don't even know whether they're interesting or not, but they're very interested in me and my life. And we have conversations on Messenger. I have a couple of people that I text with sometimes. And so it's just that concept of being interested over being interesting, because you can only be interesting for so long. If you're not interested, people just get tired of it. It just becomes very, very selfish, very self-centered. So when we are connecting to people, meeting up with people, it's really important that the conversation is reciprocal and that both people are asking each other questions. Both people are making related comments, which is basically where when someone says something, you make a comment related to what they said. Number one, it shows that you're paying attention. And number two, it keeps the conversation going. So you can make a related comment about you. For example, if they're talking about their dog, you can make a comment about your dog, or you can make a comment just about what they said. Like even like, oh, that's really cute, right? That's a related comment. So making related comments and asking people questions are the way to keep a conversation going. Those two things, asking questions and making related comments. That's how we keep conversations going and keeping things on topic as much as possible, but with the understanding that topics always subtly shift in a social conversation. So if we're talking about running right now, that may shift to other races that we've done, which may shift to places that we've been, right? So now we're no longer talking about running, but we were still following the track of the conversation. There was never any unexpected topic change. There wasn't anybody saying anything, and the other person was like, why are we talking about that now? Why are we talking about fishing? So being able to follow the topic of the conversation, even as it shifts, as it always will, asking questions and making comments. Okay, that's how we keep a conversation going. So we've talked about what to talk about when you meet people out in the world. We've talked about how to keep a conversation going. Talked about being interested more than trying to be interesting. So I want to share just other examples and other stories of how I've done this. Another story, actually in Australia. So a couple weeks later, this was when I was doing my second race. So I was racing in Australia, and it was the day before the race. And I was staying in a hotel there, and I needed some food. I hadn't eaten in too long. I was racing the next day. It was not a great situation. I needed something to eat. And so in the hotel, they had a restaurant. And so I went to the bar and I asked how I could order food from the restaurant. And he told me that the chef was sick. And so the restaurant wasn't open that day. Not good news for me. I needed to eat something. And so I just started talking to the bartender, a really young guy, college age. I started talking to him. And it was just like, hey, how can I get food? We started looking through, I don't know if whatever the Australian version of like Uber Eats, right? Where you can get it delivered. And I told him, I'm like, if you find something that will deliver, I'll pay for your food. I just need something to eat and I need your help. We ended up talking for probably 3 hours that evening. So I don't drink. I'm just hanging out at the bar. And we ended up talking. We ordered food, had it delivered, and there wasn't hardly anybody else at the bar. And so we just ended up talking. We talked about Starfish Social Club. I told him all about it. He talked about his brother. They both have ADHD. And his brother, according to him, his brother had such social challenges associated with his ADHD that he is no longer with us. That was the outcome of the challenges that he had. And so when he heard about Starfish Social Club and what I do, he was very interested in that topic. And we just had this immediate emotional connection to each other because of this commonality that we have now. We both have ADHD. That's something that we have in common. We're both passionate about helping other people. He actually was really interested in possibly starting one in Australia. So we had like a 3-hour conversation. And then the next day, I went back and we had another probably 2-hour conversation. So again, it's our conversation started because I needed food. That's how we started. But then I think he asked me, I think obviously people in New Zealand and Australia can tell that I'm American, or at least not from New Zealand and Australia. One person said, you're either American or Canadian. I'm not sure which. And so he asked me, what I was doing there, why I was there, and just started our whole conversation. Since coming back, I talk to people every time I'm on tours, every time I'm out doing some excursion or activity. I just found myself talking to everybody. I remember I went to go snorkeling on the Great Barrier Reef. And it's a little weird doing solo travel because, especially for me, the weirdest part is excursions and activities, because there's very rarely other single people there, other solo people. And so a lot of times when I'm doing excursions and activities, I kind of get like left on my own because everybody else has someone else that they're talking to. So I do find out a lot that when I do excursions and activities, everybody else has their own people and I ain't got no people. But on the ship going to the Great Barrier Reef, I ended up connecting with a couple that was it Belgium? Wales. They're from Wales. And we just ended up having this great conversation for a couple hours just about places they've been. They have a son who was in the United States. So just all these conversations, just really cool. Just a really great way to spend a couple hours is just connecting to people who have a different life than me and a different part of the world than I do. I went to a conference in Sydney, which is part of my plans. And there were five, it was a very intimate retreat. And there were five of us. And we still are connected to this day. We're connected through Facebook. And we also, it was a business retreat. And so we also meet on Zoom every 3 months and just check in with each other. We have a, is it, oh, I just forgot the name of the app, the one where you can message with people all over the world. We have a chat going through there where we, connect with whatever we want to talk about. So it just really was surprising to me. Oh, I can't believe I forgot this story. The day of my race in New Zealand, so my second day on this adventure, I was reading, there's an author I subscribe to emails that he sends out. And every week he sends kind of a thought for the week with an action associated with it. And then he'll put in comments that people sent him about the previous week. And so I'm reading this email from him after I'd finished my race that day. And somebody had written to him that they have lost their job. And he had just been sitting around playing video games for several weeks. And then he read the previous week's email. It's something about, doing something big. I don't really know. And so his decision was to go to New Zealand for a vacation. And so he put in the notes, I'm leaving next week for New Zealand. I've never been there. I think he even said I've never been out of the US. And he said, and I'm just going by myself. So I responded to this email from this author who has, I don't know, millions of people on his email list. And I just said, I'm in New Zealand by myself right now. I know that this is a long shot, but if it's possible for you to give this person my email address, I would love to connect. Okay, New Zealand's like a country, right? Like it's not small. There's 2 islands. So I have no idea where this person's going. So I ended up sending him an email and, I think the author forwarded my email to him. And so he responded and he said that the next day he was going to a town on the South Island where I was going 2 days later. Same town. We were going to be in the same place. So then we connected on Facebook. He is from Austin, which is an hour from San Antonio, which is where I was living at the time. So in the whole world, we lived an hour apart from each other. So we ended up spending several days together in New Zealand because of this random connection. So I think there are so many different ways to meet people. We can meet people just by literally being in the same space as them. We can meet people online in Facebook groups. We can meet people by random things like that, like an email from an author. I think there's just so many ways, but we just have to be open to it. I think we physically have to be more aware, like we have to actually look around, pick our head up, pick our eyes up and look around, look at other people, look at opportunities. But also we have to be emotionally open to it. We have to be emotionally open to connecting to other people. So that was my time in New Zealand and Australia and all the people that I met while I was there. So that was 2023. That was March of 2023. And I didn't know that this was going to happen. But at the very end of September of last year, I ended up moving out of Texas and moving to another state very quickly, kind of very impulsively. And I also, a week after I moved, I went on my first solo road trip to New Mexico to go to the Hot Air Balloon Festival in Albuquerque, which I just was like, that's amazing. I want to go see that. I had no idea at the time, but that started what has become the road trip adventure of my life, I guess. I've also done some flights. I've gone to some other countries, but I've been traveling so much in the last 8 months, having no idea that this is where my life was leading to. So as I've mentioned, I went to two other countries. I went to Central America. I went to Europe. My first time being in Europe, um, Puerto Rico, and then I've gone to 11 states on road trips. Me and my precious, precious kitty have been road tripping through 11 states in the last 8 months. And y'all, I have met people absolutely everywhere. Everywhere. I hike a lot. And so there's been several people that I've met literally while hiking. I can think of two right off the top of my head that I've met while hiking. And we ended up just kind of in the same place at the same time. And again, you just make a comment, you just start a conversation, typically about the trail or the hike or the place that you are, right? Just start a conversation. And so I made two really amazing connections just by being in the same place at the same time as someone else. Obviously, we already have something in common because we have a shared hobby, right? So we already have something in common. And now we're in the same place doing this thing together. That happened when I was in Panama also. I went to a park and another woman arrived at the same time as me. And in the park, you have to talk to the rangers before you go in. There's wildlife everywhere, sloths and all kinds of crazy wildlife everywhere. So you have to stop and talk to the rangers before you go in. And so because we arrived at the same time, the rangers just assumed that we were together and were talking to us like we were together. And so I just looked at her and said, "Hey, do you want to spend the day with me?" And we did. We ended up spending the entire day together. She is from, oh gosh, I don't remember now. Oh, now I feel bad. Somewhere in Europe. And she's backpacking through Central and South America. Um, So that was another just really random time. Went to Switzerland and connected with somebody. We were on a train and I could tell she was trying to take pictures of the mountains out the train window. And because I had already tried that, there's a glare from the window. And so I was trying to tell her kind of how to angle herself because I'd already tried this. Ends up, we're going to the same place. And so we ended up spending a day together in Switzerland. She's from France. We ended up spending a day together in Switzerland just because I started a conversation with her on a train. I feel like the more situations I think of, the more, gosh, the more crazy this sounds. But and it's so fascinating. Talking to her, such a great example of being more interested than interesting. She has lived in countries all over the world. She's an ambassador and has lived in countries all over the world. She speaks multiple languages fluently. It was just so cool to talk to her. And so I was definitely much more interested in her than I was trying to be interesting to her. I was just so fascinated by her. And the woman that I met in Panama, I was fascinated by her that she's on this trip, backpacking through Central and South America. Her native language isn't English, but she speaks English very well. I'm just fascinated by her. A person I met in Tennessee, very randomly, we found out when we were hiking together because we met on the trail. He lives where my brother lives in North Carolina. How random is that? And he was born in the city I live in right now. So it's just all these amazing, amazing things that come together and just connections and just all the ways that we can bond and connect with other people. It's just amazing. I I have, as I mentioned, I don't connect on Facebook with people I don't know. But if I've had a conversation with somebody and I feel like we get along, we'll become Facebook friends, even if we've never physically met. I was in Utah for a cycling event and I post on Facebook about what I'm doing and where I'm going. One of my Facebook friends that I'd never met before was in the same town I was in on the same day. And so we got to actually meet and have dinner together. Then I was in Colorado a few weeks later, same thing. A Facebook friend that I've never actually met, but we're both triathletes, where we met in a triathlon group. We were both in Denver at the same time. And so we got to have dinner together. So it's been amazing to me. Because I am such an introvert and I really like being by myself. Obviously, I travel by myself, but it's just been really amazing to me how much I've connected with other people. And I think it's because connecting with other people is our nature. It truly is our nature. Human beings are social creatures. I think we allow the stuff in our head to get in the way of that. We allow our anxieties and our insecurities to get in the way of that. But we are at our core social creatures. And so I think it's really cool to be able to express that and to receive that from other people. Okay, so hopefully that's some good strategies and suggestions on how to initiate conversations with people, how to maintain conversations with people. So now I want to talk about that moment that can be a bit awkward when the conversation kind of drops or it's time to go, whenever there's a break. So let's talk about that part next. How do we handle it when there's a break, when things are no longer kind of moving forward? Because we tend to get lots of positive emotions when we have a really good conversation with somebody, it can be difficult to recognize that there's a chance that this may be the last time we ever talk to this person. I know for me personally, when I connect to somebody really well, I want them to stay in my life. That's not always how it works. That's not always how it goes. There have definitely been people I've met along the way that I haven't talked to since. So that's definitely happened. The guy from the hotel bar in Australia, maybe he's listening to this because I think he joined the email list for Starfish Social Club. So if you're listening, reach out and say hello. But there's definitely been people I've connected to that I haven't talked to since. There's people that I have connected to. The woman that I met in Panama, we became Facebook friends, but she's younger and Facebook isn't really her jam. And so we haven't really had any connection on Facebook because she's not really on Facebook. In Utah, the cycling event, it was 4 days. I met somebody on day 2 and we ended up spending the last 3 days together, the whole 3 days together. He's not on Facebook. So there are people that I've met where it's definitely been harder to maintain that connection. So I think it's up to kind of each person as to how they want to maintain a connection, or even if they want to. One of the things I've talked about previously is that there's another concept. People are in our lives for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. Sometimes when we meet somebody, they're only in our lives in that situation. The couple that I met from Wales when I was in Australia, never talk to them again. We didn't exchange contact information. I'll never see them again. I was on a tour group, I think the next day, and connected with several people who were from the US when we were in Australia. Same thing. I'll never see them again. I'll never talk to them again. So I think a big part of it is recognizing that a lot of people that we meet randomly like this are just in our life for a reason. And it may just be that day or those couple hours, right? We may not ever see them again, ever talk to them again. And so it's important to be able to be okay with that. We then have people that can be in our life for a season. I've had that even in the place that I live now. I've connected to people, especially through triathlon, because that used to be my main hobby. And we've connected on Facebook, and they have become people who don't ever like, comment anything that I share. Why are we Facebook friends? Right? It just doesn't make sense to me. So those are people who might have been in my life for a season. And now it kind of doesn't even make sense for us to still be Facebook friends, because I'm not really engaging with what they post. They're not really engaging with what I post. Our season has come to an end. And then there's people I met that, oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot to tell you about Arkansas. Arkansas was my second road trip after New Mexico. And what I did, I was there for 10 days, never been to Arkansas before. Everywhere I've gone, most places I've never been there before. That's kind of the point of this adventure, is doing new things. I got on Facebook and I found an Arkansas women's hiking group. And so I just started joining them on hikes. The first one I did was Christmas Day. And there were just 3 of us, because, some people have stuff going on holidays. I'm not one of them, but some people do. So there were just 3 of us, but we had the coolest time hiking together on Christmas Day. And then I know I hiked with them at least twice. I think there were 3 times over the 10 days that I was there that I went hiking with them. I have remained strong Facebook friends with some of them, where we actively like and comment on each other's posts. When I was in North Carolina, I was there on my birthday, and I went to a full moon yoga session and connected with the most amazing women. And we are Facebook friends now. And I'm in a contest right now. I'm in a road trip contest, and it's based on people voting for you. And a lot of the people that are voting for me the most are people that I have met on my journeys. They're people I've spent a few hours with, as opposed to people I've known for years. So I am just full of examples of people that I have met just along the way, but some of them I will not ever see them again. Some of them have already come and gone, and some of them have stayed in my life. I'm really grateful for Facebook for that, because it makes it easy for people to stay in our lives. But just all these experiences and all these examples. So it's important to be okay with knowing that sometimes when we have a really great interaction with somebody, a really great experience with somebody, that may be all there is to it. We may not ever talk to them again or see them again. And so part of talking to strangers is being okay with that. Part of talking to strangers is being okay with the fact that this may be the last time you ever talk to them again. I actually think that's a good thing. I think it takes a lot of the anxiety out of it, because even if you try to start a conversation with a stranger and it's super awkward and doesn't go well, you're never going to see them again. It's okay. I think that actually makes it easier than trying to start a conversation with someone that you actually will see again. Somebody at work, somebody at school, somebody at, one of your hobbies. I think it actually makes it easier. It's almost like strangers are for practice. So I actually really like that. So when it comes to ending the conversation, the interaction, the exchange, I think it's, like I said, it's important to recognize that you may not talk to this person again. But if you want to stay connected to them, think about how you would like to do that. For me, Facebook is always my go-to. Just for me personally, I'm not on Instagram. And so well, I guess I take that back. I created an Instagram account maybe 6 weeks ago, and then I forgot. And so I never have checked it again. I don't even know if people follow me or like the things. I think because when I post to Facebook, I think some of them automatically go to Instagram now. I don't even, yeah, this is how little I know about it. Starfish Social Club has an Instagram account. But for me personally, yeah. And all I do with the Starfish Social Club one is post stuff. I don't ever look at things that other people post. Um, so I don't ever connect with people on Instagram ever. But Facebook is my go-to, even more so than email or text, just Facebook, because that's how you can see what people have going on in their lives. So that's always my default, my go-to is to connect to people via Facebook. So I think if both people have established that they would like to continue kind of being in each other's lives, decide how you want to do that. Do you want to exchange phone numbers? Do you want to exchange social media? Sometimes the kids exchange gamer tags, right? So there's, depending on what you and this person have in common, there may be different ways that you can exchange contact information. And then even with that, just recognizing you still, this still may be a seasoned person. Like what's happened to me, you guys may connect on Facebook and then they don't ever like, love, respond to things that you're posting, right? You may realize after you connect with them that you don't have shared values and they're posting things that don't align with your values. I've had that happen as well. I've unfriended somebody that was posting things that didn't align with my values. And so, I unfriended them. So when it comes to ending the conversation, thinking about whether you want to talk to this person again and how you want to talk to them again. I've also had people that we've made physical plans with. The person that I met on a 4-day cycling event, because we're doing this event together, we were able to physically make plans to see each other the next day and the next day, because we were physically in the same place. But a lot of the things I do, I'm just there for one day. Most of the things I do, I think my ADHD brain really likes the novelty. And so I like doing something different each day, even if I'm in the same state or the same city. I like just doing something different with my time. Okay. So I think, that's everything on my Post-it note. I think that's everything I wanted to touch on. But the connecting with other people and making all these relationships that I've made, most of them are acquaintances, right? But some of them have become friends. We interact with each other regularly. Some of them, if I travel back to where they are, I would definitely make plans to see them again. So I think this has been such a fun time in my life, honestly, being able to connect to so many people. And one of the big things that I hear is that people that I connect to like this will tell me that I'm really friendly and I'm easy to talk to. So I think having a reputation for being friendly is what makes people seem approachable. And it's what makes people want to keep talking to them once they started. So I think that's, if you find that maybe people don't always approach you, think about if you come across as a friendly person. For me, it's smiling. Smiling is one of the littlest things we can do that makes a big difference. If you think about, if you need help with something, let's say you're just out in the world somewhere, you need help with something, you are instinctively much more likely to approach somebody who's smiling than somebody who's not. Obviously, not like a joker smile, but somebody who's authentically smiling, we're much more likely to approach them than somebody who's not. So, such a little thing that can make a big difference is smiling. I think when I'm out traveling and adventuring, I'm always smiling because I love it so much. Another thing is being aware of body language, right? Having our arms crossed. I think I do that a lot because I get kind of chilly. And so I think I have my arms crossed kind of as a habit, but I try to pay attention to that just because it's not a welcoming stance, right? Having our arms crossed is signals that we're closed off. So just being aware of things like that. If you're not sure what to do with your hands, because that can be kind of awkward, sometimes I'll hold on to my pockets. So I don't put my hands in my pockets, but I'll put my thumbs in my pockets so that my fingers are still showing. Sometimes if I'm hiking, I have a backpack. And so I'll put my thumbs through the straps of my backpack. So there's different things that you can do with your hands, but try not to look physically closed off. If you're wearing headphones or earbuds, that is a universal sign that you don't want to be bothered. The same goes for other people. So I don't ever intentionally start a conversation with someone that's wearing earbuds or headphones. Sometimes I've done it because I didn't notice, right? If they have like the little in earbuds, I didn't notice. But I don't ever intentionally start a conversation with someone who's wearing headphones or earbuds, someone who's reading, even usually someone who is maybe not talking on their phone, but is doing some scrolling on their phone or whatever. So a lot of things we do habitually, but they are signals that we're not open to conversation. So my suggestion is put a smile on your face, put your arms down, put your phone down. So, we tend to habitually pick up our phones. I definitely do it too, which is part of why, hiking, obviously I'm not on my phone when I'm hiking. But I think just those little things can make people seem much more approachable. Eye contact, which I don't ever care about eye contact. I think that's a very misunderstood concept in the neurodivergent world. I don't ever teach eye contact. I don't care about eye contact. But eye contact, when it's soft, is inviting to people, right? When we make eye contact with people and it's soft and we're smiling, it's inviting to people. Even when I was on the train in Switzerland, if I'm looking around and people aren't looking at me, I am not likely to try to start a conversation with them. But if I catch somebody and we make eye contact, it's like an open door, especially if they smile or if they, have a pleasant demeanor. It's like an open door. So those are things that we can do that automatically make us seem friendlier and more engaging. Conversations, if they're awkward for us, take practice. And this is a great way to practice. Even so, not everybody's out running around the world like I am right now. And at some point I won't be anymore either. This is a phase I'm going through. But I think even when you're out in public, when you're in the grocery store, just making comment to the person, you're looking at milk together, you're standing next to them looking at milk, you can make a comment about milk. If you have a sense of humor, that usually goes over really well. Just making a joke, saying something funny, obviously, as long as it's appropriate. We don't want to be using inappropriate humor. But, sitting in a waiting room somewhere, I think there's so many opportunities to interact with people in public, but most of us either avoid interacting with people in public or we whip out our phones immediately and we just avoid the world. So put your phone down, pick your head up, look around, and see who's out there. See, there is literally a whole world of people out there for you to talk to. So that's my story of how I make friends everywhere I go. Everywhere I go. And it's just been really, really amazing. I'm very grateful for the experiences and opportunities that I've had. I'm really grateful for all the people who have come into my life in the last year and a half, from all over the world. I just think it's been amazing, and I'm really grateful for it. So hopefully you'll try some of this, and you can go out and start meeting other people from all over the world as well. Thank you for being here. I am really glad that you're here, and I'll see you again next week.